Oymyakon. This is not a list of beautiful destinations. These are places where logic says humans should not exist. Places where winter freezes engines solid, where the air is too thin to breathe, where heat rises from the ground itself, where isolation stretches so far that the nearest city may as well be on another planet. And yet people live here, not as explorers, not as scientists, not as temporary visitors. They raise families here, build communities here, grow old here. Across the world, there are places that seem to challenge the very idea of human settlement. Places where nature appears to have drawn a line and declared, no further. But humanity has always had a habit of crossing those lines. This is the story of the last places humans should live, and the extraordinary people who call them home. Our journey begins in Siberia, a place where winter is not a season, it is a force. Deep within Russia's Sakha Republic lies Oymyakon, a remote settlement often called the coldest permanently inhabited place on Earth. For much of the year, temperatures plunge below -40 degrees Celsius. In the depths of winter, they can fall below -50. At these temperatures, exposed skin freezes in less than a minute. Breathing can feel painful. Eyeglasses can stick to your face. Metal becomes brittle, and ordinary machinery begins to fail. Yet every morning, life continues. The first thing visitors notice is the silence. Snow absorbs sound. The frozen air dampens movement. Even the landscape seems to slow down. Cars remain parked outside, often left running for long periods because shutting off an engine can mean it never starts again. Residents know exactly how long they can remain outdoors before frostbite becomes dangerous. Children still attend school, although classes may be suspended when temperatures fall below certain thresholds. But those thresholds are astonishing by global standards. In many parts of the world, -10 degrees would be considered extreme. In Oymyakon, it barely changes the routine. The settlement survives because every aspect of life has adapted to the cold. Homes are heavily insulated. Water pipes cannot be buried deep underground because the permanently frozen ground, known as permafrost, makes conventional infrastructure unreliable. Instead, many utility systems are built above the surface. Food storage becomes easier, but agriculture becomes nearly impossible. Fresh produce is limited. Traditional diets historically relied on fish, reindeer, horse meat, and other foods capable of sustaining life through the endless winter. The people who live here do not conquer the cold. They work with it. Generations of experience have created a culture built around preparation. Preparation for storms. Preparation for darkness. Preparation for failure. In environments like this, small mistakes become serious problems. A broken vehicle, a forgotten glove, a delayed journey. Each carries consequences. Yet despite the challenges, Oymyakon is not a place defined by suffering. It is defined by resilience. Families gather around warm kitchens. Children play in the snow. Neighbors help one another. Community becomes one of the most valuable survival tools, because when nature is this powerful, people rely on each other. During winter, daylight becomes precious. The sun hangs low above the horizon, casting long shadows across endless white landscapes. Mountains stand frozen in silence. Forests disappear beneath snow and ice. The world feels paused. And yet beneath the frozen exterior, life continues. Humans adapt remarkably when given enough time. The story of Oymyakon is not simply about surviving cold. It is about redefining what is normal. What most people would consider unbearable becomes routine. What appears impossible becomes daily life. And that may be humanity's greatest strength. our ability to normalize the extraordinary. Because if Oymyakon teaches us anything, it is that survival is rarely about defeating nature. It is about understanding it, learning its rhythms, respecting its power, and finding a way to live within its rules. But while Siberia challenges humanity with cold, our next destination tests it with the exact opposite. A place where heat dominates every hour of every day. A landscape so alien that it appears unfinished. A place where the earth itself seems to be boiling. The Danakil Depression, one of the hottest inhabited places on the planet. Danakil Depression plus La Rinconada. If Oymyakon represents the limits of cold, the Danakil Depression represents the limits of heat. Few places on Earth appear less welcoming. Located in northeastern Ethiopia, near the borders of Eritrea and Djibouti, the Danakil Depression is one of the hottest inhabited regions on the planet. Some parts sit more than 100 meters below sea level. Average annual temperatures exceed 35 degrees Celsius. Summer afternoons regularly climb far higher. The heat here is not simply uncomfortable, it is relentless. The landscape feels almost extraterrestrial. Sulfur fields glow bright yellow. Mineral deposits stain the ground green, orange, and white. Acidic pools bubble beneath clouds of steam. Salt flats stretch across the horizon like frozen oceans. In some places, the Earth appears unfinished, as if the planet is still being assembled beneath your feet. The Danakil Depression lies within one of the most geologically active regions on Earth. Deep underground, tectonic plates slowly pull apart. Volcanic activity constantly reshapes the terrain. New cracks form, old vents collapse. The land itself is alive. To outsiders, it can seem impossible that anyone would choose to live here. Yet for generations, the Afar people have called this region home. Long before tourists arrived, long before satellite images revealed its alien beauty, the Afar learned how to survive one of Earth's harshest environments. Their relationship with the landscape is built on knowledge accumulated over centuries. Knowledge of water sources, knowledge of weather patterns, knowledge of routes across the endless salt plains. Every journey requires careful planning. Every decision carries weight. For thousands of years, salt has been one of the region's most valuable resources. Even today, workers carve large blocks of salt directly from the desert floor. Using simple tools, they cut precise rectangles from the crust and load them onto camel caravans. The sight feels timeless. Lines of camels crossing a shimmering white landscape beneath a blazing sun. A scene that could have existed centuries ago. The work is exhausting. Temperatures rise relentlessly throughout the day. Shade is scarce, water is precious. Yet these caravans continue because adaptation is not a modern invention. Humans have always found ways to survive where survival seemed unlikely. Life in the Danakil Depression revolves around understanding limits, knowing when to travel, knowing when to rest, knowing how to conserve energy. Nature determines the rules. The Afar simply learned how to play by them, and perhaps that is the hidden lesson of every extreme environment. The people who survive longest are rarely the strongest. They are the most adaptable. Standing within the Danakil Depression, it becomes clear that survival is not always about fighting nature. Sometimes survival means listening, observing, adjusting. The desert rewards humility, because arrogance does not last long here. The horizon shimmers endlessly under the heat. Volcanic peaks rise in the distance. Sulfur fumes drift across colorful mineral fields. The earth feels raw, powerful, untamed. Yet human life persists, not because conditions improved, but because people adapted. And from one extreme we move to another. from crushing heat to crushing altitude, from one of Earth's lowest points to one of its highest settlements. High in the Peruvian Andes lies a city above the clouds, a place where breathing itself becomes a challenge. La Rinconada, the highest permanent settlement on Earth. At more than 5,100 meters above sea level, La Rinconada exists in an environment that tests the limits of human physiology. The first thing visitors notice is the air, or rather, the lack of it. At this altitude, oxygen levels are dramatically reduced. Every movement feels heavier. Every step requires more effort. Tasks that seem effortless at sea level become exhausting. Headaches are common. Fatigue arrives quickly. Even resting can feel like work. And yet tens of thousands of people live here. Every day, all year long. The city clings to the slopes of the Andes beneath a glacier-covered mountain. Snow and ice dominate the landscape. The climate is cold. The terrain is harsh. The infrastructure is limited. Yet people continue to arrive. Because La Rinconada exists for one reason: gold. Hidden beneath these mountains lies one of the region's richest mineral deposits. For decades, miners have traveled here seeking opportunity. Many arrive hoping to transform their lives. Some succeed, many do not. But the possibility remains powerful enough to draw people upward, far above where most human settlements can survive. Mining dominates daily life. Workers descend into narrow tunnels carved deep into the mountainside. Conditions can be dangerous. The work is physically demanding, and every movement becomes more difficult at altitude. Yet the pursuit continues, because throughout history, human beings have repeatedly accepted extraordinary hardship in exchange for opportunity. La Rinconada may be one of the clearest examples. The city itself appears almost unreal. Colourful buildings spread across barren slopes. Roads wind through frozen terrain. The glacier towers overhead. Clouds drift beneath the surrounding peaks. Some mornings, it feels as though the city is floating in the sky. Life here requires constant adaptation. The human body changes over time. Residents often develop larger lung capacity and increased red blood cell production. Their physiology adjusts to the thin air. What overwhelms visitors becomes routine for locals. Again and again, the same pattern emerges: adaptation. Not conquest, not domination, adaptation. Humans do not change the mountain. The mountain changes humans. And yet life continues. Families raise children, businesses operate, communities form. People laugh, celebrate, dream, and plan for the future. Even at the edge of what seems physically possible. La Rinconada reminds us that the desire for opportunity can be stronger than comfort, stronger than convenience, even stronger than the limitations imposed by geography. Because throughout history, people have always been willing to go extraordinary distances in pursuit of a better future. Sometimes across oceans, sometimes across deserts, and sometimes thousands of meters above sea level, high enough that the clouds drift below their feet. From the hottest inhabited landscape on Earth to one of the highest cities ever built, humanity continues to demonstrate the same remarkable trait. We adapt, we endure, and somehow we find a way to call even the most unlikely places home. But while heat and altitude test the limits of the human body, our next destination tests something different: isolation itself. Far out in the South Atlantic Ocean lies a community so remote that reaching it feels like crossing into another world. A place where the nearest neighbour is not another town, but an entire continent away. Tristan da Cunha plus Cuba Pedy. If Oymyakon challenges humanity with cold, and the Danakil Depression challenges it with heat, and La Rinconada challenges it with altitude. Our next destination challenges something far more psychological: isolation. Far out in the South Atlantic Ocean lies a place so remote that it barely seems real. A volcanic island surrounded by thousands of kilometers of open ocean. No neighboring cities, no nearby highways, no airport, no easy escape. This is Tristan da Cunha, the most remote inhabited island on Earth. Looking at a map, Tristan da Cunha appears almost accidental. A small speck of land surrounded by endless blue. The nearest continental landmass lies more than 2,000 kilometers away. Reaching the island often requires days at sea. Storms can delay arrivals for weeks. For much of its history, Tristan da Cunha existed largely disconnected from the outside world. The ocean was not simply a boundary. It was a wall, yet people chose to live here. Not temporarily, for generations. The island's population remains small, but its story is extraordinary. Life on Tristan da Cunha revolves around cooperation, because isolation changes everything. A broken supply chain becomes a major problem. A severe storm can disrupt life for weeks. Outside assistance cannot arrive quickly. The community must rely on itself, and that self-reliance has shaped the culture. Everyone knows everyone. Families have lived side by side for generations. The community functions because people understand something many modern societies have forgotten. Survival is often collective, not individual. On most days, life appears peaceful. Green hills rise from the sea. Sheep graze across volcanic slopes. Fishing boats move slowly through cold Atlantic waters. The landscape feels calm. But beneath that calm lies constant awareness. The awareness that help is far away, very far away. Throughout history, storms have battered the island. Ships have been delayed. Communications have failed. Yet the community endured, not because they eliminated isolation, but because they embraced it. Children grow up understanding the ocean. Families understand the rhythms of weather. Neighbors depend on one another. Distance becomes normal. Remoteness becomes identity. Standing on Tristan da Cunha, the world feels enormous. Not because the island is large, but because everything else is so far away. The horizon stretches endlessly in every direction. There are moments when the island feels like the last piece of land on Earth. And perhaps that is why it fascinates people. It reminds us that true remoteness still exists, even in an age of satellites, airplanes, and instant communication. There are still places where geography matters, places where nature determines the pace of life, places where isolation shapes an entire culture. But while Tristan da Cunha represents isolation above the ground, our next destination found survival by moving below it, deep beneath the deserts of Australia, far from the coast, far from major cities, far from moderation itself, lies one of the strangest towns on Earth, Coober Pedy. At first glance, the landscape appears almost lifeless. Red dirt, rock, dust, and heat. Endless heat. Summer temperatures frequently exceed 40 degrees Celsius. The sun dominates everything. Vegetation is sparse. Shade is rare. The horizon stretches endlessly beneath a blazing sky. For most people, this environment feels hostile. But the people of Coober Pedy discovered a solution unlike anywhere else. Instead of fighting the desert, they moved underground. Beneath the surface lies an entirely different world. Former opal mines transformed into homes, churches carved into stone, hotels built beneath the earth, restaurants hidden inside tunnels. Entire neighborhoods exist where visitors least expect them. Below ground, temperatures remain remarkably stable. Cool in summer, warm in winter, protected from the extreme conditions above. It is one of humanity's most elegant adaptations to a harsh environment. Not through technology, not through massive infrastructure, but through understanding the landscape itself. Kubapidi began as a mining settlement. The discovery of precious opals attracted prospectors from around the world. People arrived seeking fortune. What they found was heat, relentless heat. Living underground was initially practical, then it became normal. Eventually, it became culture. Today, much of the town exists beneath the surface. Walking through Kubapidi feels surreal. A doorway in the side of a hill may lead to a family home. A tunnel may open into a church sanctuary. A seemingly empty patch of desert may conceal an entire residence. The desert hides life, and life thrives because people adapted. Again, the pattern repeats. Oymyakon adapted to cold. The Afar adapted to heat. La Rinconada adapted to altitude. Tristan da Cunha adapted to isolation. Kubapedi adapted to the desert. Different environments, different challenges, the same solution: adaptation. Humans often imagine survival as a battle against nature, but these communities reveal a different truth. The most successful societies rarely defeat their environment. They learn from it, they study it, they adjust to it. The people of Kubapidi did not make the desert cooler. They found a way to live within its reality. And that philosophy may be one of humanity's oldest survival strategies. Work with nature, not against it, because nature always has the final word. The question is whether we are willing to listen. Across frozen tundra, across volcanic deserts, across mountaintops, across remote oceans, and beneath scorching landscapes, human beings continue to prove something remarkable. We can survive almost anywhere, not because we are the strongest species, but because we are the most adaptable. And nowhere is that lesson clearer than in these extraordinary places. But perhaps the greatest lesson lies beyond any single settlement, beyond any single climate, beyond any single challenge. Because every community we've visited shares a deeper truth, a truth about what it really means to call a place home. Finale, humanity's greatest survival tool. What makes a place livable? Is it comfort? Is it safety? Is it convenience? Looking at the communities we visited, the answer appears to be none of those things. Because Oymyakon is not comfortable. The Danakil Depression is not safe. La Rinconada is not convenient. Tristan da Cunha is not accessible. And Kubapidi is certainly not ordinary. Yet people call each of them home. Not temporarily, not reluctantly, but proudly. Across every continent, human beings have settled in places that seem impossible. Places where the environment appears to hold all the power. Places where nature dictates the rules. And yet civilization emerges anyway. Children are raised, communities are built, traditions are passed from one generation to the next. Life continues. The lesson is not that humans conquered nature. The lesson is that humans learned how to belong within it. That distinction matters. Because throughout history, some of humanity's greatest mistakes have come from believing we stand apart from the natural world. But the communities we've explored reveal something different. They reveal a partnership, a negotiation, an ongoing conversation between people and place. The people of Oymyakon understand cold in a way few others ever will. They do not fear winter, they prepare for it. The Afar people understand heat. They understand patience, movement, timing. They survive, not because the desert became easier, but because they became wiser. The miners of La Rinconada understand altitude. They understand sacrifice. They understand the risks that accompany ambition. The people of Tristan da Cunha understand isolation. They understand community. They understand that survival often depends less on technology and more on trust. And the residents of Kubapidi understand adaptation itself. When the surface became unbearable, they simply reimagined what a town could be. Again and again, the same truth appears. Human survival is not a story of domination. It is a story of creativity. The environments may be different, but the response remains remarkably similar. Observe, adapt, endure. Every civilization that lasted learned this lesson. Every successful community understood it. The world does not become less challenging. People become more capable. Perhaps that is why these places fascinate us. Not because they are extreme, but because they reveal something fundamental about who we are. Most of us live in environments shaped for convenience. Roads connect us. Utilities support us. Technology shields us from many of nature's hardships. It is easy to forget how much adaptation lies beneath modern life. But in places like these, adaptation remains visible. You can see it in the architecture, in the traditions, in the daily routines, in the choices people make every morning. The struggle is not hidden, and neither is the resilience. These communities remind us that humanity has never been defined by perfect conditions. Some of our greatest achievements emerged from difficult landscapes, deserts, mountains, islands, frozen wilderness, places where success seemed unlikely, yet people persevered. Because survival has always been more than endurance. It is imagination, the ability to see possibility where others see obstacles, the ability to transform limitations into opportunities, the ability to build homes where none should exist. This may be humanity's most remarkable trait, not our strength, not our speed, not even our intelligence, but our ability to adapt, to look at an impossible landscape and ask a simple question. What if we stayed? And then somehow, finding a way across the frozen darkness of Siberia, across the burning salt plains of Ethiopia, above the clouds of the Andes, at the edge of the Atlantic Ocean, beneath the deserts of Australia, the answer remains the same. We stayed, we adapted, we built communities, we built futures, and in doing so, we proved something extraordinary. Humanity's greatest survival tool was never fire, never steel, never machinery, never technology. It was imagination. The imagination to believe that even the harshest environment could become a home. The imagination to see opportunity where others saw danger. The imagination to build a life where logic said none should exist. These are the last places humans should live. Yet they are also some of the greatest examples of what humans can become. Because when the environment becomes extreme, human ingenuity becomes extraordinary. And perhaps that is the real story. Not the cold, not the heat, not the altitude, not the isolation, not the desert, but the people who looked at the edge of possibility and stepped beyond it. The people who refused to leave, the people who stayed and turned the impossible into home. This is Atlas Tab, and this is Earth Unfiltered.